browning and yellowing of the leaves. Now this could be a normal cycle of a Calathea leaf, and generally if you find that it's a more mature leaf that's gone brown and yellowing and it's dying off, it could be a normal cycle. The leaf has done its job, it's photosynthesized, produced new energy for the plant to produce new leaves, and now the leaf has gone brown, yellow and died off, which is a normal cycle of the leaf. However, if you're finding that the browning yellow leaves is occurring in a younger leaf or immature leaf, it could be from overwatering. It's unlikely to be from underwatering, because you'll find that there's other signs of underwatering before the leaves completely go brown and yellow, where from overwatering, the actual leaf can become brown and yellow very quickly. So with overwatering, to try and avoid that, just make sure that the soil is actually dry 3/4 away before thoroughly watering the plant. These plants don't like the soil to be dry, but they don't like to be sitting in soggy soil for prolonged periods either. And so if the Calathea is sitting in soggy soil for a prolonged period, not only can the leaves go brown and yellow, it can end up with root rot, and that can also decimate the plant. So if you're finding that you've changed your watering, you have done it so that you're only watering it when it's dried 3/4 of the way, then check for root rot. And root rot looks like the roots are gone black, brown, mushy. It has a terrible, terrible smell coming out of the soil. And what you want to do with the plant is replace the soil and repot it. So get rid of all the rotten roots, the dead roots there, put it into a soil mixture that's more aerated. I tend to use a soil mixture that consists of 50% premium potting mix. I also put 30% orchid mix in it as well, and 20% perlite. You don't have to be exact. That's the soil mixture I use. I vary it up sometimes, and if you have any different ones, leave it down in the comment section as well, and I'd love to hear about it. Edges of the leaves going brown and crispy. Now this is quite common. The most likely reason is because of low humidity. Calathea are a tropical plant. They live in the rainforest. They enjoy tropical weather, so they enjoy high humidity. If the humidity in the household is below 60%, this is more likely for the edges of the leaves to go brown and crispy. So increasing the humidity is always a good idea. And they enjoy humidity of between 60 and 70%. Now I caution to try and avoid going above 70%, because the reason for that, especially if you hit around about 80% in the household, this can actually cause mold in the household, and you definitely don't want mold because that's very dangerous for your health. So I try and get the humidity to around about 60 and 70%. If you want to know reason or how to increase the humidity in the household without actually using a humidifier, I'll pop a link above and down below as well. And the other reason is because from underwatering the plant. Now if you underwater a Calathea, you may get by doing it once or twice, but if you're doing that for a prolonged period, yes, the edges of the leaves can go brown and crispy. So change your watering schedule. Number 3, brown tips. Brown tips on the Calathea is very common, and the reason for that is Calathea are very sensitive to chemicals. I live in Melbourne, and Melbourne has a lot of chemicals in its water like fluoride, chloride, and bromide. And if you live in an area and your tap water has a lot of chemicals in it and you use it on a Calathea, it can show very quickly on by brown tips. So I'd recommend change it to a different water. Maybe use things like distilled water or filter water, or even better, collect some rainwater. The other reason why a Calathea leaf can go and have brown tips is from over fertilizing. And fertilizing a Calathea, well, Calathea actually don't need that much fertilizer. I've been growing Calatheas for a few years now, and I find that yes, they grow, but they don't actually need that much fertilizing. And over fertilizing a Calathea, it can actually burn the actual roots, and that can cause the brown tips and other issues as well. Or it's like, the other part is like by fertilizing, well, over fertilizing a Calathea, it's like any sort of other plant, it's like adding salt to the soil. So if you're over fertilizing, it's adding too much salt to the soil, and really no plant likes too much salt in the soil, because once again, it can burn the roots. And if you find that you do have overwatered your Calathea, what I recommend is use distilled water or filtered water or rainwater and flush out the soil. So what I mean by that is get the water, pour it into the soil, make sure that the water is draining out of the soil. And keep on doing that until you see that a lot of the salts in the soil has gone away. And that's the other thing you can tell. If a Calathea has too much fertilizer in the soil, it's kind of like white granules you see in the soil. That's from over fertilizing. And I would recommend you do that. And if you do find that you're finding that after you flush the soil, it still has too much salt, you may have to consider repotting your Calathea. 4. Faded and lost a pattern on a Calathea leaf. Calatheas are known for their absolutely stunning patterns on the leaves and absolutely gorgeous, vibrant colors. And you find that if you're finding that your Calthea is looking a bit faded, it doesn't look as vibrant and as bright as before, then the most common reason is that the plant is receiving direct sunlight. And Calatheas, yes, they are tropical plants. They live in the rainforest, but they also live underneath the canopy, which means that they don't really receive much direct sunlight. They more receive indirect sunlight. So if your plant is in an area that receives direct sunlight, consider moving it away from that direct sunlight. I've been growing Calatheas for a couple of years, and I find that the only time that my Calthea receives direct sunlight is a couple hours of morning, unharsh, indirect sunlight. It never receives afternoon direct sunlight, because morning sunlight is less harsh, so they can cope with that. But even better, just put in the area that receives, the Calthea only receives bright indirect sunlight, and that ensures that the leaves don't get burnt and the colouring of the leaves don't fade away. The other common reason is that Calatheas, they don't need a lot of fertilizing, but they still need some fertilizer because they still need some nutrients. So the other reason is from under fertilizing a Calthea. It doesn't have enough nutrients to produce that vibrant, beautiful colouring that you find on a lot of Calatheas. So just making sure that the Calthea actually is receiving the correct amount of nutrients, and using a well-balanced fertilizer is great as well. Number 5, drooping leaves. So Calatheas are a type of prayer plant. They're in the same family as other prayer plants like Stramante or Tinanthes, and they naturally droop their leaves in the daytime. So they fold their leaves, drip down in the daytime, and at night the leaves fold up. So that's why they're called prayer plants. But if you're finding that your plant, it's not doing that, it's actually staying droopy, the most common reason is from underwatering the plant. And so try and rectify that. You'll probably find that it does take a little bit longer for a Calthea to die from underwatering compared to overwatering. But if you underwater your Calthea, it will eventually die. So just making sure that the soil is 2/3 of the way dry before watering it is a good idea, just to make sure that the soil, there is still some moisture in soil, that's not completely dry, but it's not soggy either. The other reason why a plant leaves can start to droop its leaves is from having a source that it's in the area that's too drafty, or it's an area where there's too much heat or sort of like drafty heat on the leaves. That can actually make the plant droopy as well, because that can evaporate the moisture in soil more quickly. So moving it away from the draft source or moving away from the heating source. So don't pop your Calthea right directly underneath, say, air conditioning, or right next to a window, or area where you have heating right next to it, that will help reduce the drooping of a Calathea. Number 6, curled leaves. If you're finding your Calathea is curling its leaves, it's a mechanism for the plant to protect itself. And the most common reason is from cold temperature. If you were in your home and you were cold, you wrap yourself in a blanket, to keep warm. Well, a Calathea is doing the same thing. The poor thing is cold, it's wrapping itself, curling its leaves to try and increase the temperature around it. And if you find this occurring, increase the temperature in the household. Calatheas like the temperature to be at least 60 Fahrenheit all the way up to 80 Fahrenheit. That's roughly around about 12 degrees Celsius to around about 27 degrees Celsius. The other reason why a Calathea will curl its leaves is lack of humidity. It's folding its leaves, it's trying to increase the humidity slightly around the leaf. So increasing the humidity is good. So try and increase it to at least 60%. The other reason why a Calathea leaf can curl its leaves, because it's feeling a bit thirsty. It needs to be watered. So making sure, check the soil, make sure that the soil is moist but not soggy. Also making sure that it's about 3/4 dry before watering the plant. And if you're finding that this is still occurring, maybe try something like watering the plant when it's like 50% dry, just to see if that helps. 7, brown and yellow spots on the leaves. Do you have a Calathea and you see these brown spots or yellow spots on the leaves? There can be several reasons. It can be from overwatering, it can be the leaves are burnt from direct sunlight, and also it can be fungal disease, or it can be a pest infestation. So Calatheas, they are prone to the main household pests, which is aphids, thrips, spider mites, scales, and fungus gnats. So definitely check your Calathea, not just at the top of the leaves, check underneath the leaves, check the stems, even checking the soil is a good idea as well. These days I use a solution just to avoid pests or infestation from occurring, rather than just waiting until the pests occur and then treat it. So I use a solution that consists of 1 liter water, 5 ml of neem oil, and 5 ml of dishwashing solution. I shake it all up and I spray my Calatheas every couple of weeks just to deter pests, because I don't want to wait until there's infestation and then treat my Calthea, because the leaves could have been already damaged, and it takes a lot longer to actually get rid of those pests rather than using a solution every couple of weeks to deter the pests from occurring. Number 8, rapid withering of the leaves. If you're finding your Calthea, the leaves are withering quickly, they're dying off quickly, it's a sure sign of overwatering. I might sound like a broken record because a lot of times a lot of causes are from overwatering, but it's the truth. Calthea don't like to sit in soggy soil for prolonged periods because it can introduce fungal disease to the roots, and if there's root rot, the leaves will die very quickly. So ensure that you're making sure that the watering is done properly, also making sure that maybe the soil mixture is well draining but still contains some moisture. You also could do things like use a hydrogen peroxide when watering your Calthea to try and prevent fungal disease to the roots. So what I tend to do generally once a month is use a solution that contains of 1 liter water and 100 ml of peroxide. This, and to use it to water my Calthea, and this helps to actually prevent fungal disease in the soil. Also, when I have my Calthea in the soil mixture, it does contain some horticultural charcoal, and what horticultural charcoal does, it actually cleans the water, so it's less likely for fungal or bacterial disease to accumulate and occur in the soil. Number 10, stunted or no new growth. So you haven't seen any new leaves on your Calthea. Maybe it could be the fact that the plant is root bound and has no area for the plant to actually grow and expand, because Calthea produces new growth from its rhizome, which is the main root where it grows new leaves. And so if there's no more area in the soil for the actual plant to grow, it's less likely to grow and expand and grow new leaves. It could be, the other part is maybe you repotted your plant recently and it's a little bit stunted, it's a little bit in shock and it hasn't settled down in its new home, and so it hasn't produced new leaves. Or there could be from lack of nutrients, some under-fertilizing Calathea. So maybe there's not enough nutrients in the soil for the Calathea to grow new leaves. So maybe add a little bit of fertilizer if you haven't fertilized your Calathea in the last few months. Or the other reason is that maybe the Calathea is in an area that's not receiving enough bright indirect sunlight. So try and remove it to an area that receives more bright indirect sunlight. But definitely don't put it in the area that receives direct sunlight, especially the harsh afternoon sunlight. Number 11, holes in a Calathea leaf. If you're finding holes in a Calathea leaf, it can be from sunburn. So Calatheas, maybe it's receiving too much direct sunlight and it's actually burning and searing in the leaves. The other reason is that maybe there's some pests occurring, especially caterpillars. You might find that, but hey, you're growing your plant indoors. How can there be a caterpillar? Maybe you brought it from the nursery and it already had a caterpillar on it. So definitely check that there's no caterpillars or snails or slugs. They're really sneaky. Definitely check the soil. They can be hiding there, can be hiding underneath the leaves or stems, because sometimes you'll be amazed what sort of pests you can bring can occur in the household. Even though you think, oh, maybe caterpillars and things like that generally occur outside, well, it can occur in the household as well. Number 12, falling leaves. If you're finding that your Calathea is dropping its leaves quickly, they can be from repotting the plant and it's actually in shock, so it's actually dropping the leaves. It can be from the pH in the soil not to be correct. So Calatheas like their soil pH to be about 6.5 or roughly around about there. So maybe rectifying that could help your Calathea. And the other reason could be from the same reason as drooping leaves. It could be from underwatering your Calathea. So I hope you enjoyed the content today. If you want to know more about the care of Calathea, you should watch this video above. And don't forget to hit the like, subscribe to the channel so I can create more content. See you next video.